cool.
Yeah. And if you need to wrap up for any reason, I'll kind of, just let me know, because we could edit whatever we need to. But I'm good for an
Nope.
hour. I put my
You're
phone on airplane mode and I'm ready to go.
you're moving, and I'm done working at 12. So perfect.
There you go. All right, there you go. All right. Well, I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm excited
Good.
about this podcast for a number of reasons. Number one, this is a milestone episode for me, for a couple of reasons. So I have been in the office that I do everything in, and during the pandemic, this became my studio for all things, whether I was creating content or managing the business. And then created a podcast during the pandemic. This has been the place that it all happened at. And when this show is over, we pack up. I have boxes all behind me, and we go. And we're going to the new location, and I'm very excited about that. And it starts a new era of not only just this podcast, but the growth that's happened over the 7 years that I've been working out of this Gilbert location. And it's also a milestone episode because I think we have one of our most well-known guests today. And I took some notes because um, there's so many things that I didn't realize about you, Todd. And I want to introduce you because and do you some justice, because I noticed something when you last spoke at the event a few weeks ago, is that there are people in the industry, unbeknownst to me, that were getting introduced to you for the first time. And, Todd has created a brand around trust. He's the number one authority in sales mastery. He's written 17 books, is on the New York Times bestseller list. He's helping people like you make more money through efficiencies and helping you earn your worth. He's the go-to in the mortgage industry. And if you've been in the mortgage industry for some time and have seen some recessions and some bad markets, Todd Duncan. But he has been the go-to to help people get to the next level. And so I wanted to introduce everyone in the audience to my man and the one and only Todd Duncan. Todd, thank you for being here today. This means a lot to me.
You know what? It means a lot to me too. I wake up every day, Chris, and I ask one simple question. Who's next? And my purpose on this earth is to wake up and make a difference and make an impact. And it's interesting when you have a 30-year journey. And our first event was in 1992, and our 30th year is being celebrated this year. You have a lot of people that have come into the industry that have not yet known who we are. And so I always look at it as an opportunity to expand our brand and everything and our reach. But more importantly, there's so many people in the next generation or generations that are coming up. They need to learn the lessons of the generation, that we began serving 30 years ago, who are now in their, I think the youngest is demographics 42 and the oldest is 78. And not surprisingly, a lot of them have kids in the business, and so it's going to be fun to just kind of vibe with you and jam and figure out what we're going to talk about. But I love the mortgage business. I love life. I love helping people win. And, it's an honor to be with you.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I got to thank you again for being a part of the breakthrough event that we had. Our very first event, it was my very first live event that we did. And it was very interesting to watch how an audience who is this tech savvy or looking at marketing in a different way through social media and doing everything online, we've come from we're starting to see this new generation come into the marketplace that is so savvy with their telephone that we're learning as we go along, or watching them do some amazing things. The TikTok videos, we had somebody there that had made a career off of YouTube, and just these content experts. But then you came on, Todd, and thank you for doing this, but you came on and you brought it back to reality that there's nothing more important than human touch and human connection. And I watched these up and comers that are coming into the audience, and I was watching it from a different lens, right? And there's times that I look back at the event and I wish that I had been a part of the audience to enjoy it a different way. But I was able to look at this and think of it from the perspective of watching it through their eyes. And I was watching everybody and the lights were going off, and I watched you inspire a room full of techies to go into a human connection. And it was amazing to watch. And so thank you for that. Um, and so let me kind of take it a little bit further. And I'm sorry, Todd, you got to give me 1 second because somebody's drilling over here, and I need to ask them to stop. So I'm so sorry. They're taking down TVs apparently. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
All right, so
No
we're
worries.
gonna edit that piece out. But here is the
Yeah.
thing that was really cool about watching what you did and being a part of it from the perspective of actually producing this event was I didn't know what to expect from you, and you took this event so seriously. And this is a guy who's done this for 30 years and has had so much success with this. And you were texting me like, "Hey, I'm doing these slides. What do you think?" And I was just so impressed with your work ethic on an event that was an intimate event. We had only 125 people at the event, and you took it so seriously. So I'm going to keep going for a second, and then I'm going to open it up because this is something really cool that happened. We were on a production call with you, and you said something to me about the word breakthrough and about what that meant to you. And you said to me, "Chris, I did one of these events a long time ago, and I said in that event that in order for there to be a breakthrough, there has to be a breakdown." And it struck such a chord with me because that's exactly what was happening inside me when I thought about doing this event. I wanted to break through and I wanted to help people break through. I wanted to inspire a group of people who are stuck to get unstuck and to understand that. And you kind of stopped me in my tracks because it was like, sometimes they have to do it at their own pace. And while this might have been a breakthrough for me and I might have given a ton of inspiration, I was so touched by that. It really hit me. But then I was thinking, I wanted to hear from you because you're one of the most successful guys in this business. There's got to be times where you've touched failure and you've touched things like, and you've had your breakthrough moments. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time today, not only getting to know you and introducing you to the audience, but talking a little bit about that. So again, thank you so much for being here. And
Yeah.
let's open it up to that. And what were your thoughts on that piece
Yeah.
of it?
Well, the first thing I want to say is to everybody right now, wherever you find yourself in the market, we're going through change, right? And we're going through markets that a lot of us haven't been exposed to, and with that comes sometimes fear, sometimes pressure, sometimes all the above. And I just want to state to everybody that your success is always going to be based on however you operate in whatever market you're in. And good markets come and go, hard markets come and go, but your growth and your becoming your best is an option. And it doesn't matter if you're in a bad market or a good market. When you're the best, and you don't have competition. And so, if I go back to the pre-call, and you said I took it so seriously, I want to send a message to everybody: you better take every encounter seriously. You don't get a second chance to make a really great first impression. And whatever people think about you the moment they see you, there's somewhere between 15 and 90 seconds for them to develop an impression about you. And that impression is very hard to change. I challenge trainers and people that say, just keep making calls on the, if they say no once, make another call on them. And, if they say no again, make another call on them. And that's the stupidest idea in the world. There's nothing wrong with tenacity, but there's everything wrong with tenacity if you don't change strategy. And, if I don't make a great first impression and I try to do it again, nothing wrong with that. But now I'm trying to make a great second first impression, right? Because the first one
Absolutely.
wasn't a great impression. So that's why I do what I do. And the other thing too, I want to say this to every person that's watching this, when I got on stage, I felt equipped because I had taken it seriously. And for me to prepare is about one thing. If I'm not prepared, there might be a life I miss changing. And I'm not the change person, I'm the change agent. And everybody in that
Mhm.
audience that decides, that hit me right where it needed to hit me, they're going to change. And so every moment you have, you're on stage. And I don't say that from a perception of rock star or a concert or anything like that, but you're there, you're You
Hmm.
are performing a trust-based conversation. You are performing the kinds of questions that engage people and pull them in. And you're always going to be evaluated by connection. It's the most important thing we understand, because you'll never get human connection through a technology interplay. It'll support you, it'll help you, but it's never going to, especially in high price transactions like we're involved in, it's never
Hmm.
going to make the difference. But back to breakdown, breakthrough. And I'll let you go anywhere you want with this. I
Hmm.
want to say to everybody, you have got to own a simple truth. And the simple truth, there's two actually. One is that everything that you're doing, personal or professional,
Hmm.
everything can be improved. Period. And so then the question is, what do you want to improve? And generally, the things you want to improve are the things that potentially are causing you the most pain.
Hmm.
And so when you want to improve something, you have to be okay with understanding that success and failure are brothers and sisters. Success and failure are not mutually exclusive ideas. And like night and day, you cannot have a day if you don't have a night. Win loss, you can't have a meaning to the word win if you don't simultaneously have a meaning to the word loss. Loud or soft, fast or slow, failure, success. And so here's what we know, and it's a really initially kind of hard concept to wrap your head around. You got to wake up and you got to love failure. And I don't mean you got to love it because you try to psych yourself up and have a mind-blowing attempt at mindset management. It's
Hmm.
not about that. It's the most successful people in any endeavor will make more mistakes than those who are not successful. And the
Hmm.
second thing is they will turn that mistake into a lesson sooner than others, because if it doesn't become a lesson, it's still a mistake being repeated. And so when we talk about your biggest breakthroughs can come from your biggest breakdowns, you've got to say, okay, success is at the other end of failure. And then when you hit a level of success because you have managed failure the right way, then you're going to want to improve again, because it can always get better. And then the cycle repeats. And so, until you learn, until we embrace the idea that failure is okay, it doesn't define us, it doesn't change our identity, it shouldn't slap you in the face and make you feel less than. Failures are beautiful. Failures are the recipe for success. And, you know, I, I've had a lot of them. I've had a lot of them, but the victories are also much sweeter because the failures were teachers. They weren't
Hmm.
like moments where, oh my gosh, I blew it, I failed. Now, we can say that to ourselves, but we always say, hug yourself, give yourself some grace, and learn what's good about this. What's good about what just happened that wasn't good. And final thing, and then you can go off on it. Um, Here's the perspective of all people that are experiencing joy and success and happiness regarding this concept. The wrong way is the right way because it teaches you a better way. That's how you have to look at failure.
So I love how you articulated that, because I'll use the event itself as a quick story, to kind of let it fall into place with what you just said, because
Yeah.
I was going through this process of, the idea entered my brain into doing something like this. And then I went to the people that I trusted most and said, "Hey, what do you guys think of this?" And they loved it and said, "We got to do it." And they supported the heck out of me in doing it. And then the first initial
Yeah.
calls months and months ago, I think it was like 6 months ago, um, I was asking, I'd start the call with, "Are we really going to do this?" I didn't want to do it anymore. I was that I wanted to go back to normal. And I kept saying, "Are we really going to pull this off? Like, guys, come on. Like, we really don't have to do this." And what was interesting about those discussions, when I think back to them, is nobody listened. Nobody even acknowledged those comments. It's almost like they didn't say. So we get on the next call and I kind of inch in there again, because I started waking up in the morning and wanted to back out of it. And then we started to get momentum on it, and it was like, this thing's really going to happen. And so we had probably
Uh-huh.
4 or 5 meetings before we actually reached out to the guest speakers and the keynote speakers like you, to say, okay, we now have this framework, and who's willing to do it. So we wrote down a list of who we wanted, with an expectation of going to the B squad. And the A squad all said yes, including you. And I couldn't believe it. I said, we got Todd Duncan, right? And so then
Yeah.
there was these oh shit moments that kept happening to me where I was like, are we really going to do this? And so then it started with the ticket sales, and we sold out a VIP like that. Like in 2 weeks, they were gone. And then like the general admission tickets weren't moving as fast. So I started second guessing everything. Although maybe we get a smaller space, and all these things kept entering my mind. But when we initially started the process and I was telling my wife about it, I said, I'm going to do this because even if it fails, I'm going to be smarter on the next one. But somewhere down the line in that process, that thought process, it just vanished out of my head. So I wasn't telling myself that it's okay, it's okay. And someone in the process, without realizing it, talked to me about this leverage statement where I can leverage, going back and going deep into pushing through it. And I just told myself, like, you're doing this because you wanted to inspire people. And you're doing this because you have to show up in a way that others may not be willing to. And at a time where people aren't doing live events the way that they used to, and people are looking to you to make sure that you're breaking through before you're leading others to break through. And so I kept pushing that back in my head. And then we did the event, Todd, and it couldn't have been better. I mean, I
Yeah.
honestly have gone back to that day and I'm looking at it, and there's little things, you want to change, but I mean, it was a hit, in my opinion, from not only the feedback that we got from the speakers, but the audience and the people that I've watched doing more and more content from it and changing the way that they're doing it. It ended up being one of the best things that I did. But if I would have allowed those thoughts in my mind to diminish what I was about to do, own me, I wouldn't have gone through. So I do agree with you that even when you fail, there's going to be success in it, but you'll never know if you're going to get success if you don't try, because you will go into paralysis by overthinking things, and you got to give yourself the credit that it deserves to move through. And so I'm going to pivot real quickly to how, when your back's against a wall at times in your life, Todd. And by the way, I heard this podcast. I think it was a podcast that you did with Darren Hardy around Failure for Success magazine. And by the way,
Right.
as I was listening to this, Todd, I and I'm going to share it with my listeners because I think it's an important that they hear it. But it brought me to tears when I was listening to it, because, and I don't get moved like that, but I was moved by your story, because we all look at you as a success magnet. But to hear you come down to that vulnerability, I had a lot of respect for you doing it. And do you mind sharing some of that story with our listeners today who didn't get a chance to hear that podcast? And by the way, like I said, I'm gonna share it, but I want to go there with you because people need to hear that there's going to be times that your back's against a wall, and it's how you dig out of that and how your mindset will impact your success through those times.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I think the way to maybe kick it off, and I'm really grateful that you're going to distribute that link because everybody will be able to kind of sit down and really drink it in. But I'll give you a few high notes, and I think that the back up against the wall. I want to just emphasize a little bit. That is back up against the wall. Like it's not like you're not feeling pressure. It is like you have nowhere to go, and the
Yes.
pressure is enormous, and you feel like you're never going to get out of it. That's the back against the wall I'm going to talk about. So I was, I did a lot of loans, and I had this beautiful journey of helping a lot of people. And my dad, bless his heart, told me that I probably wasn't going to be a good doctor, but I would be a great business person. And I was in pre med and flunking out.
Oh, wow.
And my dad had that conversation with me. So to this day, I look at my dad and this driveway conversation that I had with him, where he said, I think you need to go to business school. I think you need to get out of this pre med thing and go to business school. And if I had not made that shift, I wouldn't be where I am today, having this blessed life of impacting millions of people around the world. But that's the rosy part, right? It was getting into my calling. It was doing what God has wired me to do, and it was doing it well, and it was doing it at scale. And so by the time I was 46, I mean, I was retired,
Wow.
and I was kind of thinking, I was thinking about like what is purposeful about being retired, and what do you do next? And I could do a foundation, or I could do that, or I could do this, but I decided that I wasn't done, and I wanted to scale, and so scale meant that we were going to go from, a sales training company with about 35 employees to a global leadership and sales training company with 250 employees. And that came through the acquisition of John Maxwell's companies. John's probably one of the most profound leadership trainers in the world. He's done more for, leaders, I believe, around the globe than almost anybody in terms of learnings. And John and I had become very, very good friends. And there was a moment in time where he reached out to me and he had some priorities he wanted to focus on for the next decade of his life. And he said, I can't focus on those unless we do what we've been talking about. And he called me, and it was September of the year that this began. And he said, I want to sell the company to you. And my mindset, Chris, was this makes all the sense in the world. We teach high trust selling, and he teaches leadership. And behind every leader is got to be a bunch of salespeople, right? And so if we get into the leadership business, we're automatically into the sales business, so we can pull all the salespeople along. But that was as grand as it got. And so I bought the company in August of 2004. I took over ownership immediately. I took over management of the company in December of 2004. And December 2005, we were off to the races. And so we went from 35 people to almost 300 people. And the first problem was that there was a culture clash, not one about trust, not one about integrity. It was just that we were a very expensive company with high margins and low concentration of students and so on and so, comparatively speaking, right?
Yep.
And he was a super low margin, high volume. And so we had a cultural clash. But at the end of the day, just to fast forward, is I let somebody that I thought could run a 300-person company run it because he had done a good job running a 35-person company. And there's no negative juice around that at all. It was just a bad decision on my end.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second decision is I didn't control the checkbook like I should have. I should have had different signing authorities. And as a result of that, we spent a lot of money we shouldn't have spent. And then the market started getting weird. And you start approaching 2006, 2007, you start to feel what's going on. Long and short of it is I put millions and millions and millions of dollars into this company to keep it going. And my marriage was getting strained, and I got this wake up call. And so I'm almost, I'm 48, and I'm going, this is not how I wanted this to turn out. And so by the time I was 49, I said, I'm going to sell this company, and I was able to sell it in an asset sale. And then the bottom line is we got rid of that. I was left holding over 7 figures of debt. And then that would have been 2006, 2007. The sale closed. And then 2008, I decided to sell the rest of my company to an industry leader. And I had helped this guy build his business. And so we did a deal, and he bought my company, and there was going to be, $15 million kind of earn out. And I'm thinking, okay, great, I'm back, and so on and so forth. And then the market got worse, and the market got worse. And this guy basically told me that I had missed 6 days of work because I had to speak 60 days a year on my purchase contract, and I only spoken 54. And so he flew into my city unannounced and told me that if I didn't take a new deal, that he would fire me. And, it's hard to hear that because it's my company, it's my IP, it's my trademarks. I've spent a long time building this brand, and we're supposed to be 1 + 1 = 100, not like 1 + 1 = you win and I lose. What makes this even worse is my wife was in hospice dying from cancer.
Wow.
And I just said, you know what? I'm not going to count out of this. Relationships matter, and if this guy is not going to honor a friendship that we have, and he's going to terminate me over this, bring it. And I didn't know what to do, and so I got fired from my own company, and I had sold the assets, the trademarks, everything. I got fired illegally. They owed me millions of dollars on termination. They didn't pay. I decided to file a wrongful termination lawsuit. They enforced a non-compete. I couldn't go out and make money.
How long was that period for, if you don't mind me asking? How long was that period that you were on a non-compete, or that you weren't able to go out there?
Well, yeah. So I was terminated the 22nd or I was met with the 22nd of December, and January 31st the following year I was fired. And so the non-compete began immediately. And so I filed the wrongful termination lawsuit, and the non-compete was in force until the lawsuit was settled. So probably 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
But behind the scenes, I did a couple of things with some lenders that I thought would be safe to kind of help me through it. But the hardest thing, Chris, was watching 90% of my net worth. I'd spent my whole life, building wealth and building margin and doing it for the right reasons so I could make a difference and make an impact. And when you lose 90% of your net worth and you got two boys that are 13 and 12 who have just lost their mother, and I've just lost the woman of my, uh, you know, 25-year marriage, it's like, what do you do? And I remember one day feeling super, super sad. And my oldest son walked up to me and I was crying, and he looked at me and he said, so 13 years old, he looked at me and he said, Dad, you got to do what you teach people. You got to keep going. We need you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, right? So anyway, it's the idea is you can build something and it can go away real quickly. And I just kept purposeful. I said, okay, and the only way I'm going to get through this is if I stay focused on my why, and my why is to make a difference. And here's how the story ends, and then I'll let your listeners listen to everything. I was pretty nervous about being a success coach and teaching all these people, for
Hmm.
years on how to be successful. And when Darren called me and he said the code project of this month's magazine it's called the Big Fat Failure Issue. And he says, I want you to tell your failure story.
Hmm.
And I'm going, la, 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 la. That's vulnerable, it's vulnerable. And it's also scary. It's scary as hell to think that I'm going to tell a world that I've teached success principles to that I just basically hit a wall at 100 miles an hour and I'm lucky to be alive and standing. Darren said to me something that was really incredible. He said, what if your story helps millions avoid the same thing you went through? And I'm going, wow. What if your story helps millions of people avoid what you went through? And so I agreed to do it. And I got very, very vulnerable. And we did the interview, and it was like I was so scared, Chris. I mean, I'm for the first time becoming as vulnerable as I can possibly be. And so we finish it. The magazine's produced, the CD's in the magazine, it goes online, and it goes viral. And Success Magazine is focusing on helping entrepreneurs and business professionals be
Hmm.
their best. Millions of people downloaded and listened to that 20-minute
Wow.
interview on failure. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's the good news about losing 90% of your net worth while your wife dies and your sons have a wound that it's going to take decades to heal from? Well, the good news is I'm still standing, and the good news is I have a more powerful story today than I've ever had. And I can now identify with setback in ways that many people can't. I can also identify with the breakthrough on the other end. I am in, and so it took 10 years to get through the story I just told you, 10 years. And
Wow.
I'm happier today. I'm healthier today. In the middle of all that, after my wife died, I got cancer. I'm cancer free and healthy there.
Wow.
I've built back every asset I lost. I've built back, more revenue than I had. And I feel, I mean, would I change that? I don't know that I would. I feel more equipped to help people today, having lost almost everything,
I
and
mean,
arguably some of the most important
yeah,
things that you'll never be able to replace. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. I'd
I
like it.
have
I'd
so
like a
many
little bit
questions.
more back, but I would trade. Go ahead.
No, I know, I would imagine, right? So, let me go back to, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to interrupt you. The moment where you're in your car or you just had this meeting where they let you go, right? Or they this person that you were tight with, you'd partnered with, and they effectively terminate you. And you're seconds out of that meeting and you're walking away from it, and you know what's going on in your personal life. You're losing your wife, and you're at that moment. What were the emotions then like? And I'm curious about that because I think that's the breaking point, right? I think that's the piece where people um could be at, and that's where the inspiration comes in, because a lot of people go to that fight or flight situation. And I'm curious for you, did you have to talk yourself into the fight, or did you know immediately that you were about to go on the biggest fight of your life?
No, I don't think I knew what I would do next. I mean, I really didn't. I didn't have enough knowledge on what I could do in terms of my rights, but I also knew that I'm in the middle of one of the most emotional
Yeah.
um, downbeatings that I've ever had. Losing your wife, losing your business, losing your IP, having two. It wasn't part of my life plan for sure. And I think that with the moment it happened, I was on my way to Mammoth, and I just said, I'm going to have 5 of the best days of my life right now. And so I snowboarded my brains out and just thought and prayed and just wondered, what I could do. And so I got clear on one thing, that this is not going to be something that defines me. It's going to be something that refines me, and I'm going to look at everything I can look at in this as positive. I did a lesson years earlier called Silver Lining Living. And what I said is the essential idea that within every cloud, within every gray cloud is something that's good. And, even though the earth might be covered, or, where you live might be covered in clouds, you get above the clouds and the sun is still shining. And so I tried to put some real positive spin on it. But I was managing, watching the evaporation of money. I was watching,
Hmm.
wanting to keep my credit clear as a guy that teaches mortgages. I didn't want any short sales or foreclosures. I mean, I had to move fast, and I think the thing that drove me was that I had 2 young boys to take care of, and I really did think that how I handle this is going to help my boys handle life. And today I can tell you, looking back on it, with a 25 and a 24-year-old, they have grit, they have stamina, they've had a rough ride, they've had setbacks, they've been terminated from jobs, they've gone through the same thing, but they have character,
Hmm.
they have integrity, and they have grit. And as Darren tells in his live seminars, the only thing that kept me going was those 2 boys, and the fact that if I get through this, I'm going to be able to do what I did before this even happened. And so the lawsuit was just like, it was over here on the side. I wanted to get my stuff back. I didn't even care about the money per se. I kind of did, but I wanted my rights back. I wanted my trademarks back. I wanted my assets back. And it drove me, because while I didn't know that there would be a story, and while I didn't know I could talk differently about failure, what I did know is I wasn't done now. In fact, I have a reset. I
Hmm.
had a major breakdown. And after the Darren interview, it was like, okay, I have a breakthrough right now. And my breakthrough
Hmm.
is I get to tell the world. I get to tell the world from
That's it. Yeah.
first hand experience a big failure and how to handle it and get through it. And here's the interesting point. I just said it. I think the deal is, you either go through something or you grow through something. And my advice to people is, whenever you're going through something that's difficult, just don't try to get through it. I mean, dog determination, lean into it, never give up. I mean, that's all great stuff, but how are you going to grow through it? And I'll tell you
Hmm.
today, I'll give you an example. So much of the money I lost was because of my CFO making inappropriate decisions with my money. And we didn't have the right check signing authority put into play. And here we are today, 12 years past that end of the 10 years, and I still sign every single check in my company. Nobody has authority to sign any check in the company, period, end of story, because I don't want to go through that again. Right.
Yeah.
And so the breakdowns create the breakthroughs. They create new standards. They create new ways of doing things. You don't want to go through the real painful lessons 3, 4, 5 times. So I didn't have all the answers, but I did know that I had a purpose, and I did know that if I'd made it once, I can make it twice. And here we are. It's
Well,
just,
so
there's
so
no
did
real.
does a formula get created in your brain once you've overcome, like you said, right, truly backs against a wall, and you have some hard decisions to make on how you're going to grow through it, and so then you get through it, right, and you end up in a really good place, in terms of you won the lawsuit. I mean, there was some wins here to get what was rightfully yours back, but then you start to see success again, and then boom, you get cancer. And you said that really briefly, but in your head, does that formula just because it's hard for me to even say these words, Todd. So I'm going to push through it, but you lost your wife from cancer and then you get cancer. And does that formula just go in to say, you've done this before, you're going to do it again? How do you get through that, man? I mean, because you have no idea that how much I followed you as a student of your, I spent a week with you learning. I was shorter hair back then. But I sat in your class, for a week with you and did your high trust mastery course. And then I would see you on stage. And I remember when you got to stage and you were like thin as a bone. And I was like, something's going on with Todd. And you mentioned it at that event. But how I couldn't understand how you can get through that the way that you did, because you even got on stage and talked about it. And so talk to me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So there's a very beautiful formula, and I'll give it to you in about 2 minutes. But I think the really powerful thing for everybody to get their head around is, if life were easy, everybody would be happy. And the truth is, life's hard. And the truth is, stuff happens. And the truth is that the bigger your vision and the more you'd like to achieve for the right reasons, always, hopefully, the more adversity you're going to run into. And you have to understand that there has to be a way that you attack the problems. And I think what I learned from the financial John Maxwell, losing my wife, two boys, needing their dad, to now, and combining those 10 years experiences, is it's not that we have to, and sometimes surprisingly, make hard decisions. It's the filtering process that allows us to feel comfortable making what we think is the right decision. And so when you look at a couple of things, and I'll just be vulnerable for a moment. Both my boys have had challenges with substance abuse because they've got some pretty big wounds from losing their mom and stuff that happened in their life. And I remember that I got remarried several years later, and it was a beautiful thing, and we were dealing with, obviously my sons are spinning out of control, and we were really worried about my oldest son's life. And so we had a kind of an intervention one day, and we had tried everything under the sun to try and get him going in the right direction. And he came home high on a Friday afternoon, and my mom and dad were with me, and we had a couple of guys out in a car on the street, and our intention was to get him into a rehab facility to save his life. And I procrastinated forever making this decision. It was a hard decision. What's the right thing to do, and how do you love your son right now in the midst of all of this? And I remember at 4:15, he walked out of the house with a backpack with these two guys, and an hour later, he was in rehab. And we got a text on his phone shortly after that, and the text read this: "I scored the heroin. It's on tonight." And I'm thinking, we had a 2-hour window between making one of the toughest decisions of our life to our son maybe shooting heroin for the first time in his life. And you look at that and you go, okay, so now we look back, and here's the formula. Are we glad we did that? Yes. Um, if we hadn't done that and he had shot heroin, would we wish we had done that? So
Yeah.
it's always going to be this. You're going to look back. I'm going to look back. We're all going to look back on every decision. I'm glad I did. I wish I had. And so the key is to make the hard decisions as fast as you can for the right reasons, with the right, here's what I'd expect on the other side. So we go to cancer. Cancer is not on my life plan. It's not like a bucket list idea, right? And so we go to cancer, and I had prostate cancer. And when you have prostate cancer, there's some options. One is radiation, one is surgery, and both have these implications for guys that attack their persona, their identity,
Absolutely.
and you
Yeah.
can lose your sexual drive, you can lose your sexual performance, you can lose all control of urination. I mean, it could be really humiliating, right? And and so when I'm diagnosed with that and I'm thinking, I've got 12 biopsies and half of them are full of cancer, I'm scared. I mean, I'm really, really scared. And I remember the call. And but I remembered, okay, what do I do? And so Deb and I talked, and here's the beauty of us both having gone through what we went through with our oldest son. Um, she looked at me and she said, here's the filter. What's the best decision that gives you the greatest odds for living the longest? It wasn't like, what's the best decision so you can, this might be TMI, so that you can get an erection, or what's the best
Yeah.
decision so you don't pee your pants? It's like, what's the best decision to allow you to have a long life? And so then it became, okay, yeah, I don't want to look back on cancer like 7 or 8 friends who told me when I was diagnosed, I wish I had done this, because they went the other way and it got bad and some died. And so to know the comfort of my bride supporting a decision, and to know that the best decision is to remove the entire organ that is cancerous instead of just treating and spot treating it, and then to have the hope and the discipline and the grit to do whatever it took to make sure those side effects weren't happening. Those were all, and even got down to the doctor. Which doctor I want to choose? You know why I chose the doctor I chose? I had 3 doctors, and they all had great track records. But my doctor said to me, he said, I'm going to spend 80% of my time making sure you don't have side effects, and I'm going to do nerve preservation like you've never seen before. And then I'm going to spend 20% of the time taking the prostate out. And that's my goal with you, because I know how important this is to you. It's his goal with everybody, but sometimes you just can't do it because the cancer's attached, or this, that, and the other thing. And it ends up that the other 2 doctors, one doesn't even do robotics, and
Hmm.
so he would have done it the old-fashioned way. And the other one wanted to go radiation. And I know enough about radiation watching my dad that it screws up. I mean, this is not meant to make anybody feel bad, but for me anyway, radiation was not the right way to go. My dad had radiation, and he lost all of his sexual drive for 30 years. And so it wasn't, so now I look back and I go, okay, I'm glad I did what I did. And even though I'm blessed to not have either one of those side effects, I still had to make a decision. What is the best thing to do so that I don't look back with regret and say, I wish I had? And that's the formula. I'm glad I did. I wish I had. I'm glad I did. I wish I had. And the wish I had is lesson learning on a small scale. It's life altering on a big scale. And I'm glad I did is really empowering, because if you can make decisions based on kind of where you want to be and where you see yourself going, and then surround yourself with the wisdom of sages and people that care about you. Like, I can't talk to anybody about a child's addiction if they don't understand a child's addiction. They might be well intended, but where you get the best advice is the Teddy Roosevelt speech, and that's people in the arena. If
Absolutely.
I've had a failed business, I can talk to anybody about how to avoid failure in business. But if they've never had a failure in business, I'm not going to learn anything from them.
Well, I'm thinking about the comment that Deb said to you, and God bless her for saying it the way that she did, because yeah, I totally understand where your heart was at that moment, before
Yeah,
her saying it in such a remarkable way, to say it with a, what matters about you, was that you live long. That was the most important thing. And it's almost like the way that she said that gave you this ability to kind of reframe it cleared the path to make a decision based on that versus the opposite. And it's probably
right.
why you ended up where you ended up, and how you've done so well since then. Um, you know, I say this to people that are building their brands and as loan officers, and trying to go, everybody tries to give a sense of success at all times, right? There's these flex moves that everybody's doing online where they're showing the watches and the cars, and all of that, and it's always like the win, 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 win.
Yeah.
No one is talking from a vulnerable perspective. And I'm talking to one of the most successful guys in the arena with regard to this business. And you just laid it out, all these things that you've been through and how you've overcame them. And it's in a way, Todd, that you and I talked before, and I kind of briefly mentioned that I wanted to talk about some breakthroughs, and you laid it out, man. And I thank you for being as vulnerable as you have been. But these are stories that people need to hear, because while somebody's sitting there listening to this right now and seeing the market shift on them and they think their back's against a wall, they have no idea. And when you could put perspective on, and apply what we're talking about to something minimal that's happening to you, and really put perspective on true back against the wall, and what you're dealing with today in a changing market, or you lost a deal today or you didn't close on time, is minimal compared to the life that's happened with some people and how they've gotten through it. And these are all very important stories that I think need to be told, and just people don't tell them because they want to talk about success. So the question for you, Todd, is like, you talked about how, because I'm surprised by this in a weird way, that, the most successful guy had to really think about getting vulnerable. And then when you did it, you were like, it's like this whole new world opened up, that how you could change people's lives. But tell me about that a little bit. Like what was because there's different times, right? I think, I don't know when you did that interview with Darren, but it was a different time that you mentioned. It was done on a CD. I heard it on a link. So it must have been a few, years ago. But I mean, it seems to me like that a lot has changed, where people are leading with the vulnerability and the authenticity versus this image of just, imagery of success. What are your thoughts on that?
So a couple things, and I think I want to paint a picture for everybody that we all are going to do stupid stuff. We're all going to do stuff that we think is the right thing to do for the right reasons, and then we're always going to reflect back on and kind of go, "Why did I do that?" Right? And so this question from you on formula is so powerful, and I'll go all the way back to my third year as a loan officer. I had a drag out fight with a realtor, and she was just chewing my team up left and right, and I was mad at her. And so I called her and I read her the riot act. I was so livid that she was taking my team to the woodshed and this, that, and the other thing. And I was yelling at her, and I remember this just moment of silence. And she looked at me and she said to me, she said, "Todd, you win," and hung up.
Oh,
And so
that doesn't
I'm
feel
thinking,
good.
I won.
That doesn't feel
No, I'm
good.
thinking, all I had to do was, just, and so, so I'm sitting here going, okay, team, we won. And that's how naive I was as a 3-year loan officer. Right. And
Mhm.
so then the following week, I go to that real estate office to talk to some of my other agents. I'm 2 feet in the front door and I'm met by the manager. And he said, based on how you treated Debbie, you're no longer allowed in this
Ooh.
office. It wasn't even like you can't even do business with this person, or it's you're done. We're not good. And I'm sitting here thinking, holy cow, I won the battle, but I lost the war.
Mhm.
And it was that moment in time that I said, okay, this is the biggest customer service lesson I think I'm ever going to learn. And at least at that point it was. And I said to my team and we have got to recover this customer. We have got to apologize. We've got to make it right with her. And it was one of those things, like, you go back and you go, how stupid can you be? Well, I was brilliant when I was going through it. I was only stupid after I saw the result. But even in the stupid is, don't
Mhm.
ever think that that was stupid. Think that that was a huge lesson. And so one
Mhm.
of the things we tell people is give yourself grace. Give yourself kind of this hug that it's okay to make these
Mhm.
mistakes. It's okay to go through these processes. And so today, as we think about the question, and we think about, like, what is that? What do we do with this today? We take a look at every single thing that gets served up to us, and we ask, is there a lesson here? And if there is, you use it, and if there's not, you reframe it. And um, John Maxwell said something when I first started becoming his friend. He said, yesterday ended last night at 11:59. And I tell people, progress is helpful, perfection is harmful, growth is an option. And I think we have to embrace that. I think we have to embrace the market's hard right now,
Mhm,
but the good news about a hard market is you have less competition. The market's
mhm.
hard right now, year on year in the city and I live in, listings are down 70% last month, 70% listings down, gone. Inflation, it's going up. The war, how long is it going to last? Consumer price index up, consumer confidence down. What? Who cares? I had a green button made up when I was a loan officer. We were in the middle of a recession. I was dealing with 17.5% FHA govies, first and second piggybacks, 18.5%. Prime was 20%. Sky was falling. I become a commission loan officer. And I've always tried to have a positive attitude to anything. So I had my friends and my parents. I had a button made up, and the button was big green. It was about this big around, and the button said, "Rumor has it we're in a recession. I'm not participating."
Good for you.
And I
Yeah, that's
walked
pretty
in.
cool.
I know I walked into real estate agents' offices, and I had that button on, and they're going, "What are you talking
Mm.
about? Nobody's buying or selling." I said, "Sure they are. We just got to go find them." And it was like one of those moments where it was just like, wow, that's what it's all about. It's all about if everybody else is thinking the sky is falling and you think that it is, then you're done. But if
You're
you
done.
think it's a great time and
Mhm.
everybody else think it's a brutal time, then you're going to win. And so I tell people the market doesn't define you. Right now is a huge opportunity. Right now is a great opportunity to reconnect with agents and builders and partners. Right now is a great opportunity to start doing business reviews with, the people that you count on. And you can download the High Trust interview from our site. You can download a white paper called Talk Less, Sell More. I mean, bottom line is this is a huge opportunity for you guys to reemerge after a blessed 18, 20 months of refis. There's nothing bad about this market. Even if rates go to 5.5 or 6.5%, who cares?
It's all
Value, value,
perspective.
value.
It's all
That's all it
perspective.
is. A
If
hundred
I,
percent.
I'll see, I because I sit with loan officers, and so there'll be a reprice during the day. We're in a volatile market, and you'll hear just like the wind come out of the room, and I'm like, you're the only one that knows that there was a reprice. The customer you're talking to doesn't know that. So it's a matter of perspective. Yes, I can help you. Yes, I can get you this rate. Yes, this is what your payment's going to be. But if I'm like, oh, this is what the rate's going to be, and yeah, we just had a reprice, and I don't know, that then it changes everything. You've lost before you've even begun. And so all
Yeah.
that reluctance and all that, that you internalize is really coming out in your in how you're communicating. And it's all perspective, to your point. And so if you let this market dictate your success, you've already lost. And the guys that aren't, those are the guys that are winning. You
Yeah.
do
And
this amazing. Go ahead, Todd.
no, I just wanted to show everybody my button.
I love that. I love that. That is so good. What year was that in, by the way?
1980.
So people hear recession, right? And we're immediately thinking like 2008,
Oh no.
the-
Oh no.
Todd is seeing
You hear
recession.
everybody's listen, everybody, all the things you're hearing, worst in 40 years. Guess what? 40 years ago was 1980. That's when I was a loan officer. And, this is the worst inflation since 1980. It's the lowest consumer confidence since 1980. 40 years, 40 years. Who cares? It's all
Yeah,
perspective.
it's all
Boom.
perspective. This guy
Here's
was
the
wearing a
here's
button.
right.
A button.
And then the other thing, let me say while it's fresh in my mind, the best thing for you to do in the markets we're in right now is ask different questions. Ask penetrating, riveting questions that cause somebody to see that right now, right here in this place, you are different. I have a loan officer that we did a 30-day study on, actually did it with his company. And in January, we told them to go out with 5 agents and see if they could close a deal with one question, one question, and then do it with borrowers as well. And so the idea was with a borrower, you would ask one question and they would say yes. I mean, who wouldn't go for that, right?
Yep.
And so they had 30 days to do it. This guy gets on, he goes, I am blown away. And I said, tell me your story. And he said, I talked with a husband and wife. They were in Anchorage, Alaska. They were moving to Portland, Oregon. And I remember this: talk less, sell more, talk less, sell more. One riveting question can close the sale. One riveting question can close the sale. So he's got the husband and wife, and he looks them in the eye and he says, so, before we begin, I want to ask you a question, right? Good tee up. What would it mean to you both to own a home?
Mm-hmm.
First time home buyers, what would it mean to you both to own a home? And as he told the story, within about 15 seconds, the wife was crying. And probably 5 to 10 seconds after that, you could see the husband's eyes glassing up. And the long and short of it, Chris, was that if they could buy a home, they would be the first couple in the entire ancestry tree owning a home in their history of their family. And the guy, Tim, looks at him and says, sounds like this is really, really powerful. It sounds like this would be really, really meaningful for you guys. And they said, it'd mean everything. It'd mean the world to us. And he looks at them and he says, so I'm going to help you do that. Are you ready to get started? And they said, yes. No rate, no price, no nothing, no loan, no nothing. Just one question. 8 minutes later, here we go. And people need to do that. People need to do that in this market, and they need to do it always.
People need to do that always. I agree. But this isn't a sales technique. This is meaning to what you do as a loan officer. This is meaning to what you bring to the table as a loan officer. Many people get into this business because it's a great way to earn an amazing living. But if you want to bring true meaning to what you do every day, it's understanding the impact that you're having to help somebody through that 10 other people might have told no, that 10 other people didn't want to work with. And you're the best person to help them, but you have to understand what it means to them to get them to that next level, because you'll fight harder for those deals. You'll look at it a different way. When you write that pre-qual, you won't write it unless you validated everything, when you know what's behind why they're doing it. And I got to say, Todd, you've taught this over and over, but it's always good to hear about it and really get that perspective again. I love that story.
I think it's more important today too than ever, Chris. I mean, you've asked me a couple times about formulas, and so just two things real quick. Here's formula number one: if you really want to be successful, turn down the promotion, turn up the emotion.
Yes.
They stop promoting, start connecting. Right. So that's number one. Number two, here's the order of how you win: high trust first, high touch second, high tech third. Don't lead with tech.
Third.
Don't lead with automated high touch, because it's not. Lead with trust.
Yeah.
And then make sure you connect, and that's touch, and then support that with technology. Yes. And that's the recipe for the future, because what we know about humanity and what we know about success is that when transactions are big, you've got to keep humanity in the conversation. In the world that we're in, sellers, buyers, borrowers. And if you keep humanity at the center and you focus on trust, everything else happens.
That is amazing. And you're exactly right. And I think that's the clip. First off, that's the promotional clip for this, but also that I want to lead as many people back to you, Todd, because I have seen this work, and I'm going to show you this real quickly. So I'm walking by a bunch of these crates that we're packing, and I came across this book here. This is
I love that
this
book.
is Time Traps.
Just take a picture. Hold that up. Let me take a picture. There we go.
And the reason that I'm holding this book is because as a leader, I had left a big cushy job at Wells Fargo to come out into what I would call the real world of lending. And you were my first stop. Somebody recommended I go to your mastery. I went to your mastery, and you taught this amazing way to meet realtors. You said, write them a letter. And this is just a small piece of what you do. And this worked. Write them a letter and say, hey, I'm gonna, be reaching out to you over the next few days. And I want to meet with you, and I promise that it'll be the best meeting that you had all week. And if it isn't, I will pay you $100. I think it was something along the lines of that. I'll pay it back or something through that. I have the script somewhere, and you gave this book as a part of it because time is important to the people that you're meeting with.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it was that you put it in the envelope of the FedEx and you get to zip it, right? So there's this reciprocal relationship that immediately happens because you've given me a small token. You're being conscientious of my time, and you're also saying that I'm willing to buy it if I need to, but I want to meet with you. And that's a formula, just like you said, of success. And if you sent this out and you did that activity and you followed up like you said you would, you're going to make relationships. You're going to build some relationships with people that you want to work with. And it worked. And I would make my folks
Yeah.
buy this book and send it out when they were trying to meet you realtors. And it was an amazing exercise to go through. And I wanted to thank you for that because, Todd, I don't think you and I really were able to ever build a relationship until we had this event. And I wanted to thank you personally for, you've changed my career in a big way and how I coach people and help them. But I love talking to you, and I'm smarter every time I walk away from it. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing this for me.
No, I mean, I love you too. I love the fact that you risked some things to put an event on, and I'm proud of you. And I've never told you this. I'm proud of you that you put a pricing model together that is unheard of for somebody launching their first event. And the fact that you sold out your VIP tickets like almost immediately, and it was $1,000 more, and they got cushy seats at the front of the stage is like a testimony to the brand of your event that you started promoting. It's a testimony to the A team that you put together to deliver value, and the fact that you went through that, and I forgot to mention this, I wanted to earlier, is your belief now as a person, as a business owner, as a event promoter, your belief is higher today than it was, you know, 8 weeks
It
ago when you
is.
guys launched Breakthrough, and it's much higher now that you have the score on what happened 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and so now your belief is okay. What's next? And I believe that you're going to take Breakthrough to other cities, and I believe that you're going to be somebody that we can help expand your brand, and I believe that the fact that you tie it back to sales mastery that's in its 30th year, if you can believe, at the Marriott Desert Springs Resort. It's like, let's just do this. Let's help people win. And
Yes.
who doesn't want a breakthrough?
Who doesn't want
And
to? I mean,
so
yes.
no, but I appreciate your thank you for me, but I want to thank you because
Thank
that
you.
was a rich experience. And you did more from less, which is the high trust formula. Add more value to fewer people, and you're going to
Mhm.
win much differently than if you try to be everything to everyone. So hats off, my friend.
No, thank you. And by the
I guess
way,
I guess hats off.
there will be another one. There will be another breakthrough. It will be in Vegas, and if the stars align, you will be speaking at it. But Todd, I want to do more and more with you. I can't tell. So tell me about a few things that are coming up. You have the big event this year in Palm Springs. What year is this?
So this will be number 30, and
Wow.
we've had over 165,000 people, mortgage professionals, attend Sales Mastery. Millions of home buyers and realtors have been impacted. So this is the 30th year. There's not a brand in the mortgage space that is a brand to help you learn, grow, and get better that has lasted this long.
Yeah.
And 30 years is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing for me because when I started it, I wanted 300 people there. And I know that we wrestled alligators to get like 262 people. And now we fill it every year, 2,000 people. This year, it's not going to be any different. And we're going to do some really, really powerful things. It's October 11th through the 14th. That's the next big live event we're doing. I have a lot of individual live things I'm doing. And then we have our brand new High Trust Sales Academy
Hmm.
4.0, which is the fourth big generational change to this event. We had it sold out last year in December, and we do one every year at the end of the year. So that'll be coming up the first week in December. Otherwise, between now and then, it's podcast, it's virtual events, it's one-on-one interviews, it's everything we can do to make an impact. But if you go to toddduncan.com, just hang out there, check things out, and we're happy to help you any way we can.
No, absolutely. And by the way, I know we're talking about doing some events for the folks at Loan Depot, and that's a lot of my listeners as well. doing a private event with you. I know you're only doing 2 this year. That could be something really cool that we can get the stars align. We'll get that done. Where do
Yeah.
the youngsters find you? Where are you on Instagram?
Just go Todd Duncan Official. Those are my handles everywhere. Todd Duncan
There you go.
Official. And
Yep.
yep, that's it. Join us.
Guys, for those of you that are new to lending, you have to read Todd's first book. It's his 20th year, High Trust Selling. It's one of the best books I've ever read, but it is a must. But also, I highly recommend go to his website, take a look at the events that are going to be coming up, spend a week in Todd's mastery if you can, because it is a life-changing experience to help you grow your business, maximize your income, and get what you're worth. This is the guy who's training some of the all-time best loan officers. If you ask anybody who's been a loan officer for more than 10 years, they know Todd. And Todd has built a brand around trust. So Todd, thank you so much for being here. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. And by the way, thank you for your vulnerability on this. This was powerful today. It was so powerful. And I'm proud of this podcast. Like, you have no idea. Today was a big milestone. Thank you for being on it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And we look forward to blasting this thing all over the world and changing lives together, Chris. And I can't wait to do more with you.
Todd, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.